everybody, and welcome to another episode of I Hate Your Taste in Movies. This is a movie podcast where we inflict our favorite movies on our friends and watch the world burn. I'm Jackie.
I'm Jen.
I'm Austin.
And you can follow us on Twitter at I Hate Your Taste and on Instagram at Hate Your Taste Pod. Today, my friends, is a momentous day. We're going to see where the Friendometer goes today, because this is going to be an interesting one, because we're doing an Austin pick. Austin, what did we watch?
Not only are we doing an Austin pick, we're doing my favorite movie. So we are doing Pennies from Heaven. It's a 1981 movie and directed by Herbert Ross. It's, I was thinking about this the other day, that we all approach our favorite movies in different ways, I think, whenever we come to this podcast, because Jackie, you're always like just stoked to watch the movie. You're like, fuck yes, explosions, I get to watch this. And then Jen, You're like, I'm so excited to have my friends watch these movies that I love, which is probably the best out of the three.
Definitely.
And then I'm like, please don't watch this favorite movie of mine because I'm afraid to share it.
Definitely. I'm very selfish. Jen is more giving, I guess.
Yeah.
Jen is still convinced that you guys are going to like horror movies. So
so Jen's delusional. That's what that is.
That's more accurate.
But I'm just scared, pathetic, protective.
Rush.
Anyway, so we're doing Pennies from Heaven. I have a bit of history with this movie. I watched it probably 5 or 6 years ago in the height of my Bernadette Peters obsession, when I was working my way through her filmography. There's a lot of movies in that, and some of them are better than others. But anyways, I found Pennies from Heaven, had never heard of it, and just like really, really loved it. And it just kind of went into my repertoire. I've watched it probably a couple dozen times at this point. And I also took a music in the movies course in my master's, and I wrote a 20-page paper on this movie and the music in this movie, gave like a 30-minute presentation on it. So I really love this movie, and I think that it is criminally underappreciated. And I know it's not for everyone. I fully am aware of, that it's not going to be for everyone, but I hope that talking about it will be a good conversation, and that maybe we'll leave the podcast liking it a smidge more than we went into it.
I like how Austin was afraid for us to watch this, but I was also afraid just because I knew that you wrote a 20-page dissertation on it, and I'm like, we're just going to get a lecture. This is the episode. Austin's just going to read it.
Yeah, I might be quoting myself later.
Oh my god, please do. And also, say LaMarche et al. Wrote a paper in which this was discussed.
Please refer to, yes.
I would love that.
So, I know you guys knew nothing about this, so I'm excited to hear what you thought.
This is a hard one.
I meant what you thought it was about, but yeah.
Yeah. I could only take it basically from the title, because I didn't know who was in it, and I didn't know what it was about. So I wrote, it's a musical, because it's an Austin pick. And I wrote, the title references money. So is it about finances? Then I wrote, it's probably something about angels coming to Earth to perform good deeds. I bet people wear fedoras. And then I wrote, Christmas time?
Uh-huh.
That
I feel like
my summary.
I mean, there were fedoras, I guess, but
yeah, probably.
I mean, I feel like that was a logical series of guesses.
Right? Like, there's not much more I could have
context.
gleaned. Yeah. I'm okay with it.
And Jen?
Yeah, I had slightly more to go on just because Austin has mentioned this in passing a few times. So I knew it starred Steve Martin and Bernadette Peters. And Austin had previously compared it to the movie Dancer in the Dark, which is really depressing. And I thought maybe you called it a concept musical, or maybe it came up when we were talking about concept musicals that one time. So I thought that Bernadette Peters is dying, and her husband, Steve Martin, escapes into his mind where his life is a musical, and also the whole thing is in black and white.
You were pretty close, though.
Wow.
Yeah, that was, I don't know.
Wow,
I don't know why I thought it was in black and white. I was very confused when it wasn't.
What I got from this is that you're a way better listener when Austin talks, because I don't remember anything she said about this movie. But maybe you guys have separate conversations about movies that are like maybe more in depth. That is not really my jam, and I'm just like not involved in these conversations.
But Jen, I'm impressed with your guess though. Like you hit
Yeah.
a lot of nails on the head there, especially with the like escapism thing. And yeah, with Dancer in the Dark, that's a Bjork movie where it's kind of along the same lines. When I did my paper, my professor actually suggested that I compare the two movies, but I was like, no, I'm just going to talk about Pennies from Heaven.
You got a lot to say.
Thanks, professor, but I got some thoughts. But yeah, it's basically, I don't even know how to give a summary of the movie, but Arthur, played by Steve Martin, is a sheet music salesman. Takes place in the Great Depression, 1934. He's a sheet music salesman. He's married to his wife, Joan, who's kind of portrayed as this prudish woman who's not very impressed with Arthur, kind of more of a realist. Arthur has a penchant for escaping into his mind, trying to pretend that the world of the songs is real. So he escapes into the music that he sells, basically. And then he meets a pretty innocent school teacher named Eileen, and they have an affair, and then he leaves her to go back to Joan. Eileen ends up pregnant, and because she's unmarried, she loses her job. She's kicked out of her house. Arthur is fucked off, so she's kind of forced to turn to sex work. They eventually reunite. Meanwhile, Arthur is accused of a murder because of circumstantial evidence, and he's charged and convicted and hanged for this crime that he didn't commit. And that's kind of the movie. It's pretty depressing.
This movie, so frigging depressing. I was not expecting it. I think because in my mind, musicals are basically fluffy happy times. This was a very big surprise. And opening credits, I'm like, Steve Martin is in this movie? Boom, I'm going to enjoy the crap out of this. Immediately, no. It is so bleak. And that is my biggest question about this movie, is how can your favorite movie be such a like awful feeling, sad story about terrible people doing terrible things to each other and then dying? Like, why does anyone want to watch that? Movies are supposed to make you feel better.
I hear what you're saying.
It's baffling, especially knowing Austin. Like, Austin is a happy, bubbly, upbeat person. This is like a whole other side of Austin I did not know existed.
This is the same reason season 6 is my favorite season of Buffy. Give me the melodrama. I'm here for it.
I thought season 6 was your favorite just because you liked watching Spike and Buffy fuck.
I mean,
who doesn't like that though?
I'm not saying that.
Yeah, by melodrama, she meant shirtless Spike.
He's not as good as Angel. I'm just gonna say it.
Anyways, one thing that I really love about this movie though is how it sets up these expectations that it's going to be a happy 30s-esque musical and then just completely shatters them and turns all these expectations on their head. I really love that. And I know that I'm biased. This is going to be one of the reasons why it's my favorite movie, but I know that I'm biased, but I love Bernadette Peters' performance in this movie, and it sucks me in and it's super engaging. I know you're not going to like it. I don't care. I love it. So I'm really engaged by that.
It's not like I didn't like Bernadette Peters, but I don't know she had a single expression on her face in the entire movie.
She broke my heart the whole time.
I don't know if I had any issues with Bernadette Peters as an actress, but I had a lot of issues with that character.
Fair.
Oh, yeah. Let's just, for 1 second though, Bernadette Peters, I just want to know, is she known primarily as an actor or like a singer? Or both? Is she like the true triple threat?
She is, but I think she was initially famous from Broadway, and then in the 70s and 80s did a lot of TV and movies, and then kind of went back to Broadway, and has kind of since then done a handful of movies, done a lot of TV appearances. So she's like pretty well known in every space, and like has her own, has a lot of records and stuff. So she's pretty well known in every space, but I think she's primarily stage, but at this time was pretty well known in movies too, if that makes sense. This is actually her and Steve Martin's second movie together. the first of which that will be on the podcast, because later we will be watching The Jerk at some point. But they were together at this point. I don't know if you know that. They'd been dating for like several years.
Oh,
so
my.
They were together. Yeah.
Hello. I mean, young Steve Martin can get it. Let me just say that. Wow. He is a way better. Like, I've never seen him young before.
Yeah.
I only know white-haired Steve Martin. So young Steve Martin's got a jawline. Hello. But he's the most despicable character ever committed to film. Also, you know who else can get it? Christopher Walken.
Yes.
Hello.
What a like random appearance.
I'm very excited to talk about this.
Another thing that was so misleading in the credits. Because I'm like, we got Steve Martin and Christopher Walken. They're going to like have some dynamite scenes, bouncing crap off each other. Totally disappointed. Never the two shall meet.
Let's talk about the characters and the cast. Let's break it down. Because I feel like that's probably key to... This movie's probably not well seen. I do see it pop up periodically on Twitter and like the threads of like, what's your favorite movie musical? I have seen it pop up more than once. Also, shout out to Amy Nicholson from Unspooled, because I know this is her favorite movie too, so I'm not alone. But let's break it down. So Arthur, Steve Martin, he's probably one of the worst characters. He's awful. What were your impressions, I guess?
He sucks.
He's the worst. Everything he does is terrible. He's the most selfish, most self-serving, most destructive person. And this is always the problem I have with movies, where I don't want to watch terrible people do terrible things because I could just watch the news. Like, movies for me are to escape the realities of how shit things can be. So this movie was just like, oh, it gets worse, and then more shitty things happen, and this guy's shitty to everyone, and he has no redemption, and he just sucks. And the end. I was just like, when is the part where we learn something? So I hate him. I hate Arthur. Yeah. I hate everything about him. And all of my notes are like quadruple underlined. Like, I'm like so angry. I'm like, you are married. He's a cheater. He's a liar. He steals. He bullies. He abuses his wife. He sexually assaults people. He approaches unwilling women in the street and harasses them. He yells at a hobo. Like, he just, everything that's bad, he does.
Yeah, he does all of that, but then he's also all, woe is me, life is not working out the way I want. And it's like, you were treating everyone around you like shit, you deserve to get killed at the end, even if you didn't murder that blind girl.
Yeah.
You got what was coming to you.
It's a really good point. He's so self-pitying.
Yes.
And he's so impossible to root for.
Yeah, I think that the first couple times I watched this, I definitely had more sympathy for him. That's kind of faded, but I do appreciate the way there's like some moments where he has like these moments of clarity, and he says to Eileen at one point that he even starts to believe his own lies. And I do think that's true. So basically, I think he's delusional, but he has these moments of clarity where he's aware enough to recognize that he wants to stay in his delusions because that's a better place for him. Because his whole thing is that he escapes to kind of the quote unquote world of the songs, or a place where the songs are for real. Those are all things that he says. And so I feel like he uses it to like reconcile his conflicting inner emotions. And it's like this alternate reality, which is kind of where we'll get to when we talk about the music. But I think that's where the music really comes in and like gives him, at least for me, a little bit of a sympathetic. He's awful. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not condoning him, but I can see what the movie's doing to try to make him sympathetic in those little moments where he has these like moments of clarity. That's usually brought about by music.
Don't you find it worse though that he has these moments of clarity and understands that he's escaping into delusion and abandoning everybody else in his life and destroying them? But he's like, I choose to believe the false narrative I'm creating in my own head. Like, that's less sympathetic to me. It's more cowardly.
Right. I'm saying that I like him less the more I watch the movie, but I just like the movie moments. Like, I like the movie more when I probably didn't articulate that well, but I like the way the movie handles it.
Okay. Yeah, we agree then, because it's not...
No, I'm not. He's not. He's a pretty irredeemable character, and actually, I will say, a lot of the times that I watch this movie, I don't watch it start to finish. I'll just kind of skip around to the scenes that I like, mostly the musical numbers, but mostly anything with Bernadette in it. It's been a while since I've actually watched it start to finish, which is why last week, after we decided we were going to do it, I watched it from start to finish for the first time in a while, and I was like, okay, I got to figure out what warnings to give them, because we've talked about giving these little like warnings to like anticipate. Like that would have been helpful before the tree rape scene in Evil Dead. So
jeez.
So I was
real
like,
helpful.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, I kind of forgot how toxic Arthur is, and how sexuality is handled in this movie is not fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, unlike Jackie, I don't need my characters to be likable. Like,
Right.
I know we want different things from our movies. She wants the escapism. I like a good, depressing, tragic story. I didn't find this to be tragic. I found this frustrating. So, like, it didn't really work for me on that level. I just felt like he sucked, and I was watching him suck, and then nothing else really worked for me, so it just wasn't an enjoyable... Like, it wasn't, like, depressing. You know, sometimes you watch a depressing movie, and you have a good cry, and you, like... It feels cathartic in a way. I didn't get that from this.
Interesting.
I think I'm more in line with what you said. Like, I was more angry because I was so expecting a different movie. And every time it got worse, I'm like, when does it get better? When is like music happy and everyone has like an umbrella and they dance? For me too, when a movie is to be truly like sad or tragic or affecting, you have to either identify or care about a character. And I was just like, all these people suck. They're all trash. I don't care what happens to them.
The only character whose side I was on was the wife, whose only sin was just that she had issues with sex. And which, like,
wife.
Like, that's it. She was just like, I feel uncomfortable with sex, possibly because my husband is, like, a predator. And then all he does is just be so awful to her throughout the whole movie, and I was just like, kill him! Kill him! When she's, like, fantasizing and holding the knife or whatever, I got so happy, and then nothing came of it, and I was like, this movie sucks!
I thought Jessica Harper might be another draw to this movie for you.
Yes, that was appreciative. She survived the witch school in Berlin for this. No, not fair. Jackie looks so confused. She's from a horror movie in the 70s.
Called Witch School?
Called Suspiria.
Oh, Witch School is a better title.
Sorry.
Dear the 70s, call it Witch School. No, I didn't recognize her at all. Obviously, I don't know horror movies. But that's a really good point, Jen. Like, she's the only one who doesn't do anything terrible. And literally, the trauma inflicted on her by Arthur is truly awful. He cheats on her, he sexually assaults her, he mocks her, he steals all her money, and then runs away. Like, he's just so mean to her.
Yeah.
I do like that she kind of gets hers, though.
Well, I was gonna say, she's really the only person in this movie who actually, you know, for all the talk of, like, dreams coming true and, like, bad times passing by and, like, you know, this, wish fulfillment stuff, she's really the only one who, like, actually gets what she wants whenever she tells the policemen to cut his thing off and, like, kill him and all this. And she's really the only one that gets what she wants. Like, he dies, he dead.
To an extent, but, like, he also, like, took all her money, and now she's, like, the widow of a murderer. Like, she doesn't really have a good life after this.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, you know who does get what he wants? It's creepy hobo Joe.
Yeah.
In the worst possible way. No consequences for his horrible behavior.
Right?
So yeah, just to, like, explain it a little bit more, the murder that Arthur is wrongly accused of is perpetuated by the hobo that Arthur had helped early in the movie. I don't think he has a name. I honestly can't remember.
I think he's billed in the credits as, like, Accordion Man.
Yeah, I just called him, like, the accordion player because I didn't catch a name. But I also, like, I wasn't sure if I had missed something. Did we know he was a murderer up until he murdered that girl? I'm like, did we have anything to go on? Because I was very, like, the fuck?
No, it kind of comes out of left field.
Yeah, because I definitely would have believed that Arthur had murdered her. He seemed the type. But I had no reason to believe the accordion guy.
The only thing that I thought kind of referenced it is the way he was really acting creepy towards Eileen when she tried to give him, like, a dime. He, like, chased her and made her feel uncomfortable and was, like, really in her face. But there's no way to see what actually ended up happening.
Yeah, that's true, too, but I don't think I clocked that for the accordion player exactly because I was too busy wondering if she was the only woman that any man had ever seen before because Arthur was staring at her, the guy in the shop was making sexual comments about her, the accordion player was chasing her down, and I'm like, is she the only woman? Has none of you seen this before? Like, why are you all reacting to her? Like, she's just going about her day.
Right, and she was dressed like a dowdy kind of schoolmarm at that point, so it's like she's just the average woman down the street. Like, Joan looks pretty close to her.
She's so good and pure, and the men can tell.
ugh.
Yep.
And they want to destroy it and crush it.
Until Steve Martin changes her life with his dick, and then she turns into, like, a sex-crazed harlot.
Yeah, he forcefully changes her life with his dick.
Yes. Yes.
That was not a seduction.
No, well, she acts like it later when they're talking, and she's like, I was this poor, lost little
hate
thing,
that
and
scene.
now I see the world because you fucked me once. And I'm like, he ruined your life. Why do you even want to see him again?
Right, I know. Like, it's like I see that development, like, I see it, where it's like, when she first met Arthur, I think it was this element of excitement and, like, a glimpse of the world outside her pretty simple life that she's had. And I understand, like, I'm with her up to that point, right? And, like, discovering her sexuality and, like, stuff like that. Okay, fine. Go Eileen, you go girl. But then, yeah, it's that complete infatuation and, like, love, quote unquote love for him, that it's her downfall, ruins her life.
Honestly, when he sleeps with her for the first time, and I'm not saying they sleep together, he has sex with her, and she says no.
Yeah.
He's crying because he's telling her how his wife has died, even though that he's totally making this story up and lying. His wife is alive at home waiting for him, and the entire fact that he slept with her should make her kill him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, the way he even goes about it's not like he had an affair with her. The entire affair was a lie.
And she had asked him point blank, are you married? Because she knows men ain't shit. And he was like, I'm not married. And then he's like, my dead wife. And then she gets pregnant. Her life falls apart. He's like, oh, by the way, I am married, but I'll take care of you. Here's my address. And sends her to fucking where? To get murdered? And then the next time she sees him, she's like, I still love you. No.
Yeah.
No.
And the reason he loves her, or claims to, is because she's willing to have sex with him in an elevator.
Yes, well,
Like,
that's
somehow
okay.
That's it.
So this is part of what I was talking about with Arthur and the way some of his escapism translates. Like, I think that he has this very weird, he thinks he's better than he is. I think he thinks that he's more morally superior than he is. And I think that in some of the way that we see his idealization of her, like in that first scene when she comes into the music store and she's like transformed into this, like, there's like a soft glow around her, and like it's this, I think it's a Bing Crosby song playing, and he's able to kind of like rationalize this like lust, and it's an obsession that he has for her. Like, it's just lust. Obviously he's not in love with her, even though he says he is. And then I think that's why he snaps at the shopkeeper whenever the shopkeeper makes the comment of like, oh, you know what she needs. And it's because he doesn't want to recognize that feeling in himself. And then he does the same thing with the accordion man, because he makes some weird comment about her. And then he does it again with his colleagues when they're talking about like sales and stuff. And they're like, oh, did you get your hand up her dress or whatever? And, you know, at first he's like, this is love. This isn't just lust. And then, you know, he sees his own like feelings reflected back at him. And those are the moments that I was talking about that I like. And I like those moments.
Yeah, I guess it always comes down to just like taste, because I don't like those moments. It just makes me feel worse. I'm just like, ugh, these people are so terrible. I don't want to see that he's becoming aware of how bad he is and then ignoring it and continuing on with his horrible behavior.
He has no growth in this movie. I will say that. He has no growth. I think that he like starts to, I think when the world kind of comes crashing down on him, I think he starts to get there. The delusions start to break, but he doesn't actually go anywhere with it.
Yeah, when he is deciding that he should run away with Eileen and they should smash apart his business. It's like, yeah, so he doesn't have the comfort of his delusion, but he's just like regressed to pure childish, ridiculous thinking. Like he what's the opposite of grow? He shrinks. He goes even further away from being a rational adult. So maybe his delusions were helping him because it kept him being able to function. I think I also just I have a real limited ability for like cheaters and liars. I'm just like,
it's fair.
The reality of how many people cheat on their spouse is not something that I really want to contemplate. It's bad news bears.
I know it's the 30s and he traveling salesman and that kind of era. This isn't an uncommon story for them to like go away and like cheat on their wives or even have second families and like not respect women at all ever. So like I don't, like I said before, like I can watch movies where bad things happen. You guys know that. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with watching movies about bad people. But I don't know, this one just didn't work for me, so.
It's too bad.
I liked the murder subplot. If we had more of that up front, because I felt like the good first half of the movie was just like him being shitty and his relationship with Bernadette Peters, and I was like, is this the whole movie? Is just watching this man be awful? And then once we got to him being framed for murder, I was like, well, now that's hilarious. I'm on board.
It's honestly funny to me because I like, as I mentioned, I sometimes will just jump around through the movie and not watch all of it. I forget how shitty Arthur is from the start, and that this movie to me is not about Arthur. This movie to me is about Eileen, and I'm much more interested in her. So, and I'm much more interested in her story because to me that is like just melodrama, and I'm here for it. I know.
See, my issue with Eileen, like I was saying before, is like I feel like, you know, she calls herself Lulu after she becomes a sex worker, and I feel like Eileen and Lulu are two different characters, but I don't understand how Eileen becomes Lulu. I don't think they did enough there for me, where I'm like, she's just a completely different person now, and I don't see how Eileen would have reacted to these situations the way that Lulu is.
That's true. I'm still not sure how much time is covered in this movie, because I think it's a fairly long period of time. I think it's got to be a pretty long period of time, because you're right. I think that we would have benefited to see something between when she meets Tom, Christopher Walken, and when she's reconnected with Arthur. Like we needed something in that, because I think, so there's definitely something missing, some thread not quite connecting it.
Yeah, because there were scenes with Lulu being like no nonsense and shit, and I was like, I appreciate this aspect of the character, that she is like, oh, I'll pay the bills anyway I have to, like, you're just a loser, I'm done with you. And I'm like, okay, she's a strong-willed woman for this period, I appreciate this. But then I'm like, 5 minutes ago you were this like, had your life ruined, sad school teacher, like how did you become this?
I found that a lot of the time in this movie, the way it was put together really confused me. There's the aspect of the timeline and having no concept of how much time has passed. They don't even make a physical change so that you know time has passed. But at the same, they have scenes that end in a really strange place. Like the way it cuts from one scene to another, it doesn't make any sense. There's no finality to the scene that comes before. And I'm just like, well, what happened? He's just like, they have him say, I love you. And then he stares at her for a good 12 seconds. And then it's just, and we're done. He's back at home. And I'm just like, did she say anything to that? Like, did the conversation continue?
Oh, when he stalked her and found her house. And then.
It's just like, it just jumps around in a really weird way.
Yeah.
And the choices, that really kept me from understanding what was actually happening in this world and what I'm supposed to be following. I don't know if I've seen a movie like this before. It just seemed weird the way they tried to sew it together.
Yeah, I think there's some pacing issues in general. Like, I don't think it's a shocking statement for me to say that, like, the dialogue's a little not great sometimes. I hate how many times they say Arthur's name in this movie. We should play a drinking game, watch this movie, take a drink every time the word Arthur is said. You'll be hammered in the first 10 minutes. But yeah, like some of the pacing just in general is strange, and I do wish that there was, even if it was like 4 months later, you know, like 2 months later, like give us something for the timeline, because I think that would have helped showcase especially Eileen's growth, because I think her growth is interesting, like you said, Jen. Like there's the two aspects of her personality, and I want to see how she got from point A to point B.
Before we got to like the Lulu storyline and she kind of first arrives to the address that he'd sent her to, which is like an alleyway, I was like, I want her somehow to find Joan and the two of them team up and murder Arthur.
Oh,
that was the movie I wanted. And then they like, you know, they're living off the insurance money from his death because they cover it all up, and they like start their own business or something, just live a happy little life together as friends. That's what I want.
Please write some fan fiction on this. I will read it. It'll be
Pennies From Heaven fan fiction. It'll be just me, the only one.
Sorry, I do have a question though. What address did he give her? Like, did he know?
A fake address. I didn't notice this until like a recent rewatch. Like I'd seen this movie over a dozen times before I realized, and I'm just stupid probably, I could not figure out why she ended up at that bar where she meets Christopher Walken. It took me so long to figure out that she was looking, like, that the address that he gave her was just a random address. It was like a blank wall. That, like, and when I realized that, it was just like my heart just broke even more.
Oh, so the address wasn't for the bar, it was for like She just happened to go to the bar after she
I
realized.
think so. I think it was just like an address that didn't exist, I think it was just like an address that didn't exist, and then.
Because I thought he was but I thought he was basically referring her to a pimp.
Yeah.
Being like, go be a sex worker.
Interesting.
That would be super fucked.
Yeah, I think I like it a little bit better that it was just a fake wall, like a blank address.
Yeah. But then, because I had assumed he just sent her to, like, that fucking alleyway where there's nothing or whatever. And then she kind of just went into the nearest bar. That was my assumption. But then, thinking about it later, I'm like, no, this seemed to have been a very specific bar. Like, I think she was like, I don't have any options at this point. I'm gonna have to go follow those sex workers and see where they hang out.
Yeah, because I think she knew what she was getting into there.
Yeah. Also, can we talk about how lemonade costs like 2 cents? I was like, holy shit, I gotta go to the 30s.
Right, and they're giving free gin away?
Yeah, amazing.
I'm there. Although
I mean, everything else was terrible, but I'll go back for the cheap prices.
The bar actually seems kind of cool. I would go hang out in that bar, and I would definitely watch Christopher Walken dance.
Yes.
Yeah.
The man can move.
I am excited to talk about your reactions to Christopher Walken.
Speaking of underused, like, he was the best part of this movie, even though he is also despicable. But I don't know why it's a different kind of despicable. Like, maybe it's just the twinkle in Christopher Walken's eye.
I feel like he's more honest about the fact that he's despicable. Like, he knows what he is and what everyone's here for. Whereas, like we said, Arthur is still like, poor me, I'm the victim of the world.
That's got to be it, right? Like, he's honest about everything. He tells her what she's getting into, and he's not, like, really forcing anything on her. He's like, this is the situation you're getting into. Are you prepared for this? In not so many words. But he's not trying to trick her and be like, you're going to be my girlfriend. I'm going to take care of you. It's like, you will be in my stable of sex workers.
When he says, you're not a tease, are you? And then she tries to be all flirty and is like, a tease? And he's like, because I'll cut your face. And intense.
That is probably the saddest moment of the movie. When she's just like crying silently.
Yeah.
Really understanding what her future's going to be like. Oosh.
But did you see this tap number coming?
Not at all.
I mean, I assumed there was going to be some sort of dance number because it's Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
I didn't see it coming at all. It was a total surprise. And it was maybe the most enjoyable musical number of the entire movie because it was just showcasing him. And he's being a little silly. I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's Christopher Walken, but it came across as like more happy than the rest of the musical numbers.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say it's a happy number, but I understand that it's fun to watch. It's also the weirdest musical number to me because, like, okay, so I do want to get into the songs and how music is used because I think it's really cool. So I have this theory, I'll say this. I have this theory that Arthur is the one that starts this, like, going into his little alternate reality to escape his dreary life. He starts this, and as he interacts with more people, it kind of starts to rub off on them. Like, not literally, obviously, but that's kind of just how the movie presents it is, you know, once Eileen meets him, she has this, you know, the tap dance number where she's like leading a swing band and stuff. So anyway, I have this theory that that's kind of how that works. And it happens with Joan too, later on when she's fantasizing about killing him. But this one doesn't really make sense because I can't figure out why it's there in the sense of it's not Tom's alternate reality. Like, it's not Tom's escape. We don't know Tom. So is it like Eileen imagining this? But like, why would she be? I don't know. It doesn't quite fit with the other ones, but I mean, I'm glad it's there. I'm not going to complain.
It kind of makes sense to me because of all the things Eileen needs to try and escape or put a different face on, it's the inevitability of her becoming a sex worker, right? So maybe she's trying to make this image of Tom be less threatening and awful and fun it up a bit. Kind of makes sense to me if it's Eileen's perspective, because out of everybody, she has the most reason to try and escape.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't think about it the way that you did with your theory, Austin. I kind of just assumed this is how the movie is. Everyone has these weird little fantasy world dance numbers, and there's no thread or connection. Just people do this. Like in musicals, where people just burst into song, even when they're strangers to the main characters, you know? It's just...
Same.
We all lip sync weird old songs and do a little dance number in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, that just reminded me. Since I had no idea what was coming, the first time someone opens their mouth and lip syncs, it's Steve Martin to a woman's voice.
Yep.
And I'm like, is he singing this? Does he have a falsetto range? Like, what is happening? It was so surprising.
This is what I debated whether I should give you a heads up or not. I think I texted you, Jackie, just saying, by the way, the musical numbers are weird.
Yeah, definitely.
I am kind of glad you never gave me a warning because I got to have a pure what the fuck reaction. But I thought about it later and I'm like, I can't believe this never came up because I remember thinking, whenever you said Pennies from Heaven is your favorite movie, I know you also hate when actors are cast in musicals and they don't really have strong singing voices, and I was always like, does Steve Martin have a strong singing voice? I know he plays in a band, I know he plays banjo, so like maybe he does sing well, I don't know. And I never asked you about it, I never interrogated this thought. So when he opened his mouth and some like radio from the 1930s with a woman singing poured out, I lost my mind.
Yeah. See, I don't like that, right? I don't like it when it's not the actor singing, but I think that this movie does it well because they're not pretending. It's not like you're supposed to think he's singing. It's just like, no, we're gonna turn all these, I don't know, cliches on their head, I guess, a little bit. And I like the fact that the songs really help to establish the setting and like reflect what the audiences would have been hearing in the 30s, the songs that Arthur is selling. There's no illusion there. Like it's just the characters like open their mouths and then like sounds from the 30s come out. It's just like total escapism. I love it.
I appreciate what you're saying. I did not love it.
Yeah, it's
very
weird.
It was very weird. The dancing was pretty cool,
right?
But like I didn't think that it made any emotional impact on me to have them lip syncing songs.
Yeah, I found myself kind of checking out during some of the musical numbers. And I think it is because, like, that 1930s style, like, it's just, I don't know, it didn't engage me as much. But I did kind of, like, this movie obviously did not work for me, but I did kind of recognize at a few points why it makes sense that Austen loves it so much, because it is those big, ostentatious, like, song and dance numbers, and then just a little bit of plot tying them together. So it did not surprise me when you said that sometimes you just rewatch the musical numbers.
Yep.
So I was like, I see that.
Jen, do you ever watch a movie the way Austen does and just like skip around?
No.
Never. I've never even considered that. I'm like, if I'm going to watch any part of a movie, you're committing 2 hours of straight movie watching.
But I also never watch YouTube videos telling me how a movie ends before I watch it.
That is an only Austen thing. I mean, that's crazy to her. Like sometimes she reads a Wikipedia summary so she knows every beat that's coming.
And she just watches like clips of like big scenes and it's like, I saw the movie.
Yeah, and usually I have. Okay, so this is where I'm gonna dive into my 20-page paper here.
All right, we'll take a break. Austen, take it away.
I would like to posit to you that there are 3 uses of music, and the music is used in 3 ways throughout this movie, okay? It's used to establish settings and convey, obviously, the character's unspoken desires. We've talked a bunch about that. But I also thought it's interesting that the songs that are used repeatedly later as reprises, like they would be used on Broadway, right? Or as underscoring to kind of blur the line between music that's actually, or that's diegetic and non-diegetic. It also, there's a series of songs that are used to pay tribute to Hollywood's like 1930s golden era of musicals, right? So, but they, again, present those ideas in new ways. So I think it's interesting to talk about that because it's stuff that I've picked up on the more I watched it. So like, I didn't expect either of you to particularly enjoy this, but I did just want to talk because I think the music is used really, really smartly. And so I think it's cool. And so with that, I want to say these points, but I don't know how to do it remotely casually.
Dude, just lean into your scholarly vibe.
Okay.
Just tell us that you have proven us wrong because you have objectively solved that this movie is good.
Yes.
I'm not sure she can be objective.
I can't be objective. We talked a lot about like the alternate reality stuff or like, you know, the escapism stuff. But first I'd like to draw your attention to the song that plays over the opening credits. It's called The Clouds Will Soon Roll By. And as the song ends, Arthur wakes up. It is serving as a literal wake-up call. We later hear that song when he's driving past the murder scene where the blind girl has just been found. He's talking to the cop or whatever. And that serves as another wake-up call because he comes home to Joan and is like, that's when he's like, I gotta be good, I gotta be better. Because he's something's clicked. It hasn't really stuck, but like that was kind of a less literal wake-up call. So that's option number 1. Then I would like to draw your attention to the song Pennies from Heaven, because this song serves to tie Arthur's fate directly to the accordion man, right? Obviously it's the song. What did you guys think of the song, the dance to Pennies from Heaven that the accordion?
I loved the visual of the coins being everywhere. Like when the accordion man is dancing, you could tell that he wasn't dancing on literal coins. So it was a cinematography trick, but it was beautiful. I loved that visual.
Yeah.
But that was it.
It was sequins because they were found on the lot for up to a year later. Yeah, so like there's that song, and it's also like a weird version because that's a well-known song. There's like famous versions of it by like Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra, but they chose this like really strange version that's super warbly. Like it's just an odd kind of melancholy version of a pretty happy song. So anyway, but then it keeps playing every time there's any kind of association between Arthur and the accordion man, and then Arthur even recites the words to the song whenever he's about to be hanged. So that's one thing, just tying them together. And then, as we discuss Eileen's character growth, which I posit she does have a lot of, is the song Love is Good for Anything That Ails You. And it is used 3 times in the movie. The first time, right after she's met Arthur. So she's kind of naive. The world is opening up to her. Maybe they have a future together. She doesn't know he's married yet. She's just had this like exciting encounter with a man. And then it's played again the first time they have sex. This is kind of foreshadowing the fact that love is not good for anything that ails you. In fact, it will be her downfall. And then the last time we hear it, it's Arthur's looking out the window of his record store, and there's like a shot of women in fur coats and stuff trying to like entice customers into the store. It's not like they're not sex workers, but it kind of like gives that illusion, and it's like a much racier version of the song. And I'd like to establish that just after that, Eileen is forced to turn to sex work, and her own innocence is lost. So that's one thing. Guys, this is so stupid. I'm so sorry.
Oh, this is smart.
It's just, you're very like passionate, but I love when you're like, Exhibit A.
This song, which first represented her exposure to a life outside of her own simple one, and her desire to explore her own sexuality, now mocks her situation. By the time we hear the song the third time, it represents her complete transformation, emphasizing all that she has lost in an effort to survive. I just wanted to touch on those points. Maybe I've overanalyzed it at this point, but I do think that the music is used in really cool ways, essentially, is what I'm getting at.
No, I didn't even pick up on so much of the repetition of the songs, other than, like, Pennies from Heaven itself, so...
Yeah.
It's good information, Austin. Good job, lawyer Austin. Exhibit A, you proved your case.
I was just going to say, is music lawyer a type of job? Because that's what Austin should be.
Thank you.
Music theory lawyer.
Yeah, sorry for that. I just didn't know how to bring those up casually.
No, just, do you need us for anything else? Do you want to keep going?
Yeah, I'll just finish reading my paper. It's great.
How about we take a total left turn, and maybe someone can educate me about why lipstick on the nipples is like a sexy thing to do.
Okay. I was looking at my notes, and I got to the part where she put lipstick on her nipples, and I wrote, lipstick on your nipples for this man?
The whole scene of the lipstick nipples is so upsetting because he's such an abuser, and he's manipulating her so badly, and she's crying.
Is that part of the fantasy? I don't know. And I also feel so bad for her later when she's talking to the cops, and like they're asking her, has your husband done anything weird lately? And she's trying to tell them, yes, he forces me into weird sex games I don't like. But because she's so traumatized, she can't like articulate like, he made me put lipstick on my nipples and like all other kinds of weird stuff. And I felt so bad for her in that moment, and the cops were kind of like sleazy about it. And I was like, this poor woman, like, you wasted good lipstick on this man of all men.
And doing it every night because she didn't know when he was coming home.
Oh my god. And it's the depression, they're broke. She's going through half a tube. Like,
Joan. Oh, Joan.
Poor
that
Joan.
whole, yeah, I know. It's just, I know she's supposed to be sad, but it's so sad. She's trying to do whatever she can. She's giving. All he does is take, and lie and steal and run out on her.
He also, I wrote this down because he refers to them as lovely little rosebuds, and it's the grossest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Ugh! Oh god, honestly, I had a gag reaction right now.
I had to write that phrase
Whoa.
down because I had such, like that. I had a visceral reaction. I hated it so much. I hated everything about it. He deserved the gallows for that.
For that's just that
Right.
line, yeah.
So if I can take us on another left turn, was the accordion player a serial killer?
I mean, probably.
Why do you think was there any mention of a previous dead woman?
He was hitchhiking, going from town to town. You know, he killed this girl seemingly out of nowhere. She just happened to walk by him. It's leading me to believe, like, has he done this before? Like, is he going around hoboing it up, killing people?
It's very possible.
It's a very interesting thing. I kind of took it to be that he was very simple and maybe not 100% there mentally. And I kind of took him to be pushing his affections onto women in a really uncomfortable, unwelcome way. And it escalated with the blind woman who he didn't understand why she wouldn't like eat his food or whatever. And she's blind, so she has no concept of what's actually happening. And it just kind of got out of control. You know, she maybe hit him to try and get away and get her bearings, and he reacted. So I wasn't sure that I saw him as like a predator out to get prey like Arthur. More like something happened and it just got out of control, and he doesn't necessarily feel the desire to do it again or have done it in the past.
Okay. Interesting.
But like, didn't you get the impression they were trying to make you think that he was not completely mentally there?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm letting expert Austin go.
No, I haven't really paid him a lot of thought, to be honest. Yes, I think they do make that. But I also wonder if maybe they're portraying it as like maybe he's not as like maybe it's a bit of an act that he's putting on. I don't know.
So maybe I'm the stupidest person in the world because I thought he was coming across a little simple, but I genuinely thought it was just because he was like foreign and didn't understand things well. But now I'm like, did I invent that? Did any of that happen? Would I make up the fact that he just didn't understand what people were saying sometimes because he was like Italian or something?
He didn't have a noticeable accent.
No, that's why now I'm like, did I invent that story?
I think you might have.
Okay. Well, in my version, he's an Italian-American serial killer, so take that.
That's cooler. That's more interesting. The thing that really kind of, to me, underlined that he was socially awkward and potentially simple, if that's even the term I should be using, God knows. But that was when he was in the diner with Arthur and he wouldn't make eye contact and like he tried to kiss his hand. He just obviously is not able to read a social situation.
Yeah.
And it gets weird. And so it's obviously he's had this trouble before, even just getting in his car. Like, so I felt like they were really pointing out that he does inappropriate things without necessarily malicious intent.
Interesting.
Okay. That's fair.
But he sucks. He murders someone.
He definitely sucks.
It's implied that he rapes her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, get fucked, Mr. Accordion Man. I hope bad things happen. I really also didn't like that there was no other reference to him or any consequences for him.
Yeah.
Infuriating.
Yeah, we'll just assume he got killed off screen.
But in a bad way. Like a long way. Like a Jen movie way.
Ooh, interesting.
Ooh, okay. Eyeballs plucked out?
Please, minimum. Can we talk about the poor blind girl? Like, who's looking out for her?
Yes, I wanted to touch on that actually when we first meet her and Arthur is like preying on her. I have to ask, was he going to rape her? Like, what was his intentions with creeping on this woman and trying to like get her alone?
I think he was going to play the Eileen game.
Yeah. I don't think he would have, well, I mean, we can...
The definition is iffy when it
Yeah.
comes to Arthur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He would have tricked her and
Yeah.
lied to her and tried to trick her into sex with him and then dumped her or disappeared.
Yeah. But as we see of her, she's pretty like no nonsense. Like she does not stop for Arthur. She's like, I know where I'm going. Please leave me alone. But say he had, continued, tried his Eileen game on her. Like, would he have escalated to that point? Because I kind of think he would have.
To murder?
No, to rape.
Oh.
Because he saw a young woman by herself walking in an alley under a bridge, and his first thought was like, ooh, sexy time.
Yeah, see, that's what's frustrating about Arthur, is because I don't think, and, like, toxic masculinity in general, like, I don't think he thinks he's just out for sex. I think he thinks, like, oh, I'm being a gentleman. Where it's like, nah, dude, you're harassing these women.
Yeah, I do agree too, Austin, like you're saying, like in his mind, he doesn't see that he's a sexual predator, even though he 100% is.
Yeah.
And if he had just had a little more energy in his step that day, he could have ruined that girl's life as well.
I don't know. I guess that they had to have it as a storyline to put him in peril and get them running from the law and everything. But the blind girl murder just seemed really unnecessary. I don't know.
It also comes quite late in the movie.
Yes, this is what I was saying. Like, I liked this kind of subplot. I mean, not the fact that a blind girl got murdered, because I think that's probably the most tragic part of the movie for me. But the fact that he was about to get, like, arrested for a murder he didn't commit, I was like, okay, I like this. Why didn't we introduce this earlier on?
Yeah. See, I thought about introducing this movie in a similar way that Jen's been doing with horror movies, in the sense that I know that there's some on your list further down the line that you want us to watch, but in order to appreciate those, we need to see other ones to be able to understand. And so I was like, I don't know how well this is going to play in terms of all the tributes that it pays to MGM musicals of the 30s and 40s. And logically, it would have made sense to watch some of those and then watch this. I'm changing the subject, by the way, if that wasn't clear.
Yes,
this is
I caught that.
Not related to the blind girl murder.
The blind girl being murdered is actually a reference to this 1935 MGM musical.
Yes. But it pays tribute in a lot of different ways. But like one thing is like with the tone, I think there's this idea that the musicals were super light and they were escapism, and like obviously in the height of the Depression, and it's also the Hays Code of Hollywood. So there was literally like a ban on discussions of the Depression on radio specifically, and a lot of movies just never talked about it. So a lot of Hollywood musicals came later that were quite light and fluffy and just ignored the circumstances, so they can seem a little frivolous. And what I find interesting is that Fred Astaire saw this movie, and one of his major complaints for it was that it was like trashy, and that the 30s was a happy and innocent time, and you know, this movie's just like not representative of the 30s. And my argument to that is like, maybe in the movies, but the 30s was not an easy time. Like, I wouldn't go so far as to say that it was like a light and frivolous time as an innocent time. Like, it was a struggle. And I think that this movie walks an interesting line between depicting the realities of the Depression and also paying homage to like the innocence of the movies that were famous at that point.
That's a good point. That's just a really good point. Because, the perception you have of a time from the movies is not relevant to how times actually were.
Right.
So, if you're trying to explore what Hollywood was like in the 30s, this is not an accurate depiction. But if you were talking about how people really lived their lives during a time when there was no money and no jobs and despair everywhere, this is pretty accurate. I don't even want to think about the number of women who turned to sex work to keep their families alive in the Depression. It's terrifying.
Yeah. One of the movies that is actually referenced a lot in this that I hadn't heard of, but I've watched some of since, is Gold Diggers of 1933. And so it obviously came out in 1933, and it's pre-code. So it actually is one of the few movies that addressed the Depression head on. And so I think this movie takes a lot from that, and a lot of imagery as well, like the big like floating coin or rolling coins that are in that first opening number with Steve Martin and the banker. Like, that's like pulled right out of Gold Diggers of 1933. There's like the literal scene that's ripped out of a Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers movie. Follow the Fleet is the movie that Arthur and Eileen go to see, which, spoiler alert, that's my favorite fucking scene. I love that dance number so much. But I just think it's interesting that they've taken all these little threads from this time and like are really evoking the imagery. And like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Busby Berkeley musicals, but like all those dance numbers where there's like,
why would you ask if we're familiar?
I think you are. You might just not know you are. But like the imagery of like all the dancers in various shapes from like these aerial shots, and like they're either like in a pyramid or like in some like concentric circles, and like they all move in a way that looks like a shape is moving. Like, that's Busby Berkeley musicals, and that's like all over this movie. And so like a lot of the costumes, there's a lot of little, did you catch Eileen singing in the Rain at one point? That was a cute...
I did. I wrote that down. It was a Singing in the Rain reference. I understand that now.
So I don't know. I just think it's an interesting way to like I said before, kind of walk the line. And also the idea that like, so I mentioned this before, but a lot of the song titles are dealing with the idea that like bad times are going to pass, looking forward to things, looking forward to the bright side. And it's just like kind of mocking the current situation that they're in. Like it's this interesting juxtaposition that I really like.
It's so funny because right now I feel like I'm how Jackie normally is, because you're like, let's go deeper and let's talk about the different levels to this movie.
I'm so sorry.
And I'm just like, I don't understand this very specific plot point that happened. We need to discuss the surface level.
I'm flattered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like how you're like, I feel dumb this week, like Jackie.
No, that's not what I mean.
I feel like it's exactly what you meant. I got the message, Jen.
Okay, fine. I am dumb as rocks. I only know the surface level of movies.
That's
why did she put on a bathrobe when she was still wet? Yes, I remember that one, Jackie.
It still bothers me. I occasionally think of that. It's so unrealistic. It makes me so angry. No one would do that. Stand by my comment.
Yeah, I'm sorry for totally nerding out. I hope this is like remotely interesting to someone. I just think it's worth examining.
It is. I wish they had shown more of the Follow the Fleet movie and dance and less of them in the movie theater, because that scene lasted an hour of us watching him watch the movie and us watching Eileen watching him watch the movie. I'm just like, make this end.
Oh, I love it. That whole scene. I love it. I was actually watching it before we hopped on the Zoom call. Just that scene.
It's just, yeah. I know that it means a lot, and obviously they're making a lot of commentary. But on the superficial level where I live, this is just like, let's watch this man and his like pathetic, selfish ideas about all him. And it's just like a man's masturbatory wet dream about how the entire world is against him and he's a victim and he just wants things he can't have and he doesn't care who he hurts. And it was so hard to get past it. So when you're telling me more things about it, it's making me think about what the movie's trying to say, not about what the character is trying to represent. And I like it a little bit more.
Yeah.
To try and understand what they're saying, because there's
I
not
also
a lot.
Just don't. Like I said it before. This is so stupid. I forget how much Arthur is in this movie. I forget that Arthur is the main character of this movie. To be honest, and I feel like that's probably for the best, because he's not good. I wonder how much of that is a product of like 1981 time, like when the movie's made. Like I don't know how much of it is maybe that aspect of just like maybe they didn't realize how awful he is just because times a changing. But I don't know. Or maybe they were like, let's make this character completely reprehensible. I don't know.
Here's a question though. When you think of this movie, when you just like generally have your mind stray to this movie, is it just Bernadette Peters alone?
No, it's like it's the Let's Face the Music and Dance number.
Which one is that one?
That's the black and white in the movie one.
Right.
It's Christopher Walken. It is Bernadette Peters. It's her whole scene with Christopher Walken I find like awesome. I love when she's like, "Are you married?" And then he makes some weird comment. She's like, "Yeah, I thought you were." And I like it. I think she's great. Or when he's like, "I know how you feel." And she goes, "Do you?" So I like that whole scene. I don't know. It's just like those little moments I really love. And I do like Steve Martin. Like I think he does a good job in the movie. It's just a shitty character.
You know what was secondarily the most annoying after Steve Martin was the kids in their dance instrument sequence. Hated every second of that.
I do find that they close up on the kids that are like the scariest looking. Like I was looking behind and I'm like, there's some cuter kids back there. Like, could we bring them to the front?
Show kids, like little kids who are really musical or acty or want to be breaking into Hollywood, freak me out.
Are we talking about young Austin right now?
Sorry, Austin. I don't think she didn't have like a stage mom and this weird desperate fervor in the eyes that creeps me out.
I will give you that there are some creepy looking kids in there. But that's what I'm saying. Look in the back. There's some normal looking kids. Why aren't they at the front?
Yeah. That whole scene I honestly had to look away from because I was like,
they
these
did so
kids
good
are
though.
terrible.
They did a really good job. Also, the drummer and that little there's a little drum solo and he's like miming drumming. He's like actually doing it. Like he's playing the right rhythms and like coordinating. I was very impressed.
But she's wearing that silver dress.
Oh yeah.
That what?
Yeah. Bob Mackie made all the costumes. He was nominated for an Oscar for it.
Oh really?
Yep.
I only really think of him as in Cher, but yeah.
Oh yeah. He also makes all of her like in real life, he makes all of her concert dresses.
So I do have a question for you, because you mentioned earlier that like Bernadette Peters was like theater and also like movie and stage and like TV and kind of does everything. I was really confused why she wasn't singing in this movie. I know everyone is like miming or whatever, but because I associate her as like a Broadway person, I almost thought it was kind of like a waste. Not
Right?
Why would you cast a singer and then not have them sing? So I just want to know Austin's official opinion on this.
I know. When I first watched this movie, I also had no idea what to expect going into it, and that was my reaction of like, what a waste, what the fuck, bold choice movie. Well, that kind of brings me to the ending of the movie, because something interesting happens at the end in that we hear their real voices for the first time. And so I think we've covered a lot of things. So I am going to take this as a segue to ask you how you think this movie ends.
He dies?
He 100% dead.
Right. What about Eileen?
She's still staring out that window, being a sex worker.
Yeah, same.
Interesting. So I just made this ending 10 times sadder in my head. I have a theory that she completed suicide. I think that she is also dead, because they get this happy reunion together and they've spent the last half of the movie talking about how gotta be someplace where the songs are for real, like, you know, and she's been very ambivalent kind of about the end for the last while. This is like the first time we hear their real voices. They both sing. They're both back in their like drab clothes from the beginning of the movie as well. And so I kind of think she's dead.
But you think they're in heaven?
I think they get their happy ending. I think they're reunited in whatever.
Ew.
But, well, this is my theory, is that I think that they get their happy ending, but it's not realistic. Like, this ending couldn't have happened diegetically. Like, this isn't a real thing. So it's like the happy ending that theoretically audiences want on like an emotional level, but it's not deserved for anyone really. Like, it's not real. So that's my theory. I think she did.
That's interesting.
Okay.
I just assumed she was like fantasizing like happy ending, and like you said, they're in their clothes from the beginning, so I thought that was her being like, if things had been different, if we had gone another way, you know,
So
we
you thought
could
it
have
was
had a
perfect.
life together. Yeah, I thought she was the one fantasizing because he's
Oh,
you know,
man, I like
I
that
thought it was
part.
his last minute, you know, the last little bits of oxygen in his brain,
yeah.
having a hallucination, and then
Oh, man.
he's dead. But I also think that, yeah, I can see what you're saying, that it's what the audience would want to see as a happy ending. But it would make me really mad if we were supposed to believe that they both died and were reunited in the afterlife. That would make me real mad. Because they do not love each other at all. It's the most dysfunctional, monstrous relationship ever. So they shouldn't have a happy ending, because it's all a lie.
That's what I mean. It's
built
not
on lies.
deserved.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be, if someone tried to tell me that the ending was supposed to be real and like they're reunited somewhere and happy, I'd be like, that's the worst possible ending.
I think it also kind of not pokes fun, but it like can bring like make you question other happy endings, not like in such a literal way, but just like all the movies that just kind of tie up in a bow because they have to, whether or not the stories should.
I need my happy endings. I refuse to question things tying up with a bow. That is my favorite way for things to end.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I think Arthur dying was a happy ending. I was very happy to see that go down.
So why did my brain go to she's dead? But I still kind of stand by it. I think there's
No, that's totally fine.
It does make sense to a degree. I almost prefer it than her having an empty, sad life of sex work.
right, because what's the alternative?
Yeah.
She goes back to school.
Yeah.
It'd be great if Arthur like left her the business or something, although that would screw Joan over even more.
This is where she and Joan team up.
Yes,
I do
that's
like
a
that.
good ending.
I do like that.
Me too.
Fun fact about phonograph records. So radio sales during the Depression actually grew. It was obviously the primary source of entertainment, but as Arthur finds out the hard way, record sales plummeted something like 50% during like 2 years of the Depression. So yeah, Arthur really came in that business at the right time, you know?
He's a friggin' genius, that man.
Yeah.
He obviously also too didn't have a business plan or anything. He's just like, I've decided that records are the thing.
Oh, that's the other interesting thing that I thought was worth noticing is at the bank when he's like asking for his loan and the banker's like, because that's a stupid idea. He like gives this like impassioned plea about how like salesmanship made our country great and, you know, it's going to turn it around and all this stuff. And And then they have this like big dramatic musical number where he gets all the money that he wants. And I think like had this been in a more frivolous or more light, like actual 30s musical, like he probably would have walked out of the bank with a loan after that impassioned plea. And so I do like that this movie kind of sets that up and then tears it down.
Can I give you a superficial gripe I have about the movie?
Must you?
Yes. So at the opening, it is established that we are, as you said, in the Depression in 1930s Chicago. So as you guys are aware of how my brain works, I was like, oh, is this a gangster movie? 1930s Chicago is full of mobsters. Not one, not even a reference. Where's John Dillinger? He's murdered in 1934. That should be on the newspaper headlines. In Chicago, by the way. Like, what?
That would be great, actually, if there was a side plot with a mobster. I don't know, if he gives him a loan or...
Ooh.
Yes!
That'd be pretty cool.
Yes. Anyway, basically, I just wanted to watch a different movie, so...
Oh.
If there was a version of this movie that was about 1930s mobsters, and then also Joan murders her husband...
Yes.
After
on board.
Teaming up with Eileen.
I would also love some prohibition and, like, speakeasies and sneaking around. That would be pretty cool. Yeah. So what we need is a musical action horror movie about prohibition.
I mean, this is why Chicago was the only musical we
Totally!
all liked. There's murder, there's 1920s, Prohibition era, all the shit we want.
That's it. We're never getting better than that. That's the pinnacle.
Should we do some high points and low points?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Who wants to start?
This is hard.
Yeah, I can start. I think my high points are the moment where I thought Joan was going to stab Arthur. I was very excited for that. I thought the movie was going in a different direction, and I was here for it. I also, like I said, I do like the subplot of him getting kind of falsely accused of murder. I enjoyed that part of the movie. And I would have liked if that had been more of, like, the meat of the movie. If it had been more about, like, him going on the run and the mistaken identity and all this shit. I would have liked that. So I did like that part of it. My low points... I said points plural because there will be more than one. The lipstick, nipples, and general mistreatment of Joan, I just really hated. Obviously, you're supposed to.
Yeah.
He's a vile person.
That is one thing I will defend the movie for, is like, I don't think we're supposed to like him. Or I don't think we're supposed to
of
think
course.
he's good.
Of course, but I hated it. I didn't like a lot of the musical numbers, and I'm sorry, Austin, because I know that's your favorite part, but I struggled with them. Here's the one, specifically. I remember this now. The scene where he's, attacking the guys who are saying sexual things about Eileen, and then all of a sudden it cuts to the three of them walking in like it's about to be a vaudeville number. I was like, no, I refuse. I do not accept. That one really, that was a struggle. So those are my low points.
I don't understand.
We're different people. We like different things.
I know, but that's such a good number. And that's where it's like, he's showing that he's not any better than anyone else. Like, the whole thing is like, don't talk about a woman that way. And then they're like dancing and like grabbing tits and shit. It's like, you're just as bad as the rest of them.
Yeah, just did not.
Oh, Steve Martin one of the dancers from that number actually just recently passed away. And Steve Martin did a nice little tweet in remembrance of him and how it was an honor to dance with him in Pennies from Heaven.
See, Steve Martin, the real person.
Yeah, I like Steve Martin.
No, but he's all confused in my head with this character. And I'm like, oh, he's not such a bad guy. And it's like, no, totally different person. That is called acting, Jackie. But still, it's sticking in the back of my head a bit. Anyway, my high points, I liked watching Christopher Walken dance.
Yep.
Like, I would really watch him do anything. I love him in a pure way. Even as he's playing a despicable pimp, it's still, I can't hate him. It's a weird thing I have for Christopher Walken.
That's so strange. Yeah, I have the oppospe problem with Christopher Walken.
Right?
That
most people do.
Everything I know about him and, the whole Natalie Wood situation, I'm like, I don't like you, Christopher Walken.
Honestly, I don't know much about... I know he was on the boat or something, but...
Yeah.
Purely as a superficial person, I enjoy Christopher Walken. And the other high point I had was that I really enjoyed the accordion man's dance and the pennies and the sequins. Yeah. I don't know. I just really loved that. Thought it was really beautiful, pretty. And I'm a fan of that color scheme, like the bronze. It was just cool. So that was one of those moments where I was like, with this big oversized background, I'm just like, this looks cool.
Yeah.
My low point again, it's like Arthur. What really got me is his initial corruption of Eileen, where I was like bold, awful lies to her face, and then a sexual assault. And I was just like, this whole thing is really awful to watch.
Yeah.
And then it turns out for him that she loves him, ? And follows him around. Like, the fact that he gets away with that and it's not even questioned is so awful.
It's almost a little bit of that trope, right? That we were kind of talking about with the Fifth Element, like not to the same extent, but it's like she kind of just falls in love with the first guy who shows her attention.
But I mean, every man was showing her attention. Like in
All
that first
men.
scene where we meet her.
I don't know. It was so overt and predatory and manipulative, and like, I'm setting out to get what I want and I don't care what happens to her. It's so awful. And I was uncomfortable watching it, and I was just like, we're watching something that should not be seen. It's awful.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't a low point so much, but I had trouble getting into the movie because of the way they did such a long, endless scenes of faces not doing anything with silence. And I'm just like, is something supposed to be happening? I was always waiting for something that never delivered. So it's like the way they put this movie together wasn't fluid enough for me, and I just it took me out of it sometimes.
Yep.
That's it.
My high point.
You can't just say Bernadette Peters.
But
Can't
she's
do
my
it.
high point. She could they could just film her and only her for 2 hours. She could just sit on a chair and I'd be like, this is the greatest movie of all time. No, my high point is the Fred Astaire movie scene. I love that part. I love when they're transported into the movie. I love the costumes. I love the dancing. I'm a sucker for tap numbers. So I
just wanted to ask what you thought about the end of that number when the Canes become
the foreshadowing that Arthur's luck is about to change, and
is that what it's supposed to represent? I was like,
I think so.
Is it the fact that they're jailed by their delusions and hopes and dreams?
That they're like getting, caged in, that the world is closing in on them.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that scene. I love it so much. And the costumes, I love her dresses. My low point, it's definitely the scene where he tells her the lie about his wife, and then it's like this weird sob story about getting hit by she got hit by a motorcycle and all this. I hate it. It's gross. And I understand what you're saying, Jackie, where you just felt uncomfortable, like you're watching something you're not supposed to be watching. Because I don't even think I looked at the screen like either time I watched it this week. Like it's uncomfortable. I think that one might be a case of this just was a bad 80s idea more than this was an artistic choice issue. So that's definitely my low point. But I am glad that we watched this, and I appreciate that I know you guys didn't like it, but I'm glad that you weren't super aggressive about your hate for it.
I don't know how I would say that I hated it. How do I explain this? There's some movies that I hate because I hate the way they look and they make me feel, like Beetlejuice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very inoffensive movie, but it viscerally makes me want to die. And I hate it. I didn't have that vibe in this movie, but I was just like, I hate this character so much that I can't like this movie. You know what I mean? Like, I need something to root for. I need a reason to want to watch this. And it was just like, this person is the worst person on earth. And I don't want to see how his life develops. I want to cut him out completely.
Yeah, see, in my mind, he is cut out. It's great.
That's great. Like, I think I want to live inside your brain.
Let's watch Austin's YouTube version.
So yeah, it's not like the movie. I don't hate it the way I've hated some other movies.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not my least favorite.
Well, that's good. Or I wonder if Jackie has any quotes for us.
You guys, I don't really have any quotes. Because, I mean, I think Austin said it. The dialogue is not exactly snappy.
No.
So I tried to look up some of the quotes online, and I don't like any of them.
There's one that I liked that
Please.
I wasn't sure. It's when Arthur's, just before he reunites with Eileen, He's like walking on the sidewalk, and he walks past another sex worker, and she asks him if he wants a nice time, and he goes, "No, I like feeling miserable," and just keeps walking. That kind of made me chuckle.
Yeah.
There's like a few comments that I like I kind of brought them up already, like her conversation with Tom and when she walks out on Arthur. I like those moments.
Yeah, I do like when the brief fleeting moments where Lulu has independence and says, like, basically, shut it, Arthur.
Yeah.
I'm going to get money however I know how. Like, I'm not going back to the farm or whatever. Like, I know that life is bigger and I don't care what it takes. I'm going to live here as something, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, the only things I wrote down of quotes was, like, awful things Arthur said that enraged me. So
we don't need to
we don't need to
revisit
those. I was just like, I can't believe he said this. Fuck him.
Like, we all have the same reaction. We're like, not worth repeating.
Yeah, no.
Let's not bring that more of that into the world.
I don't have much in the way of trivia either, to be honest. This isn't like I said, it's not a particularly well-known movie, and it's got very mixed reviews. The budget was $22 million. This will come as a surprise to no one that it flopped at the box office. It only made $9.1 million. I think some of that can maybe be attributed to people not expecting to see Steve Martin in a dramatic role, because this was also like the height of his stand-up career and like SNL and coming off The Jerk as well. So
I also think like this movie isn't really a big budget musical, even though it is.
Right.
Like, it's kind of like an art film, so you wouldn't expect it to have a ton of budget and a ton of box office success. So maybe, like, I don't know, maybe if they had done it, like, if they had marketed it differently, it could have been a better story.
It's a weird movie, I think, in a lot of ways, and it's just kind of, I think it's just weird. Like, I think it probably takes people by surprise. It was also the first MGM musical in over a decade, and I think they were maybe hoping to sort of revive that a little bit, so that didn't help. So as far as trivia, what I do have, the pennies, as I mentioned, were penny-sized sequins, and after filming, they blew out the stage door, and they could be found in the corners of the streets at the MGM lots for over a year. 127 dancers made up the last scene. There's a lot of the big Glory of Love moment. Did you guys recognize any of the songs, by the way? I wasn't sure if you would have.
Just Pennies from Heaven.
Oh. I recognized the 2 seconds that she sang Singing in the Rain.
Okay. I figured Let's Misbehave may have been known, or maybe Glory of Love. Really? You don't know Let's Misbehave? Okay. Cole Porter. All right. That changes some things that I might need to add to my list. Yeah, in his memoir, Steve Martin talked about how he was on the road for about a year doing stand-up when he was prepping for this movie, and just spent the whole time listening to 30s music on his cassette player in preparation for the movie. And he said it was really a form of solace for him, and it was like before his transition to focusing solely on making movies. So I think he really appreciated the experience of this movie. So that's good, I guess. This isn't really trivia, but it is a blooper. In her classroom, there's a Canadian flag on the wall with all the countries of the world. Fun fact, the Canadian flag was not invented that design wasn't invented until 1964.
Oh, yeah, good catch.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
There's a couple of other anachronisms. The movie's set in 1934, but the movie that they go to see, Follow the Fleet, wasn't released until 1936. There's a couple of those songs that weren't released until later in the decade. I don't think it really makes a difference. I think it's more just a tribute to the decade in a general way more than anything. Same with the fact that Arthur Parker was hanged by the state of Illinois. Illinois stopped using hanging as a form of death penalty in 1928, so he should have been electrocuted.
Yeah, that did catch me off guard. Like, I really thought he was going to get the chair. And then they had him on the gallows, and I was like, oh, right, I forgot this was a period piece. But
right.
I guess even the 30s, they'd stopped doing it by then.
Yeah. And then there's also, I don't know if you guys noticed the tableau vivant, like the recreations of paintings. There's 4 of them in the movie. I'm assuming you maybe caught one, the Nighthawks of the coffee shop. Yeah. There's also Hudson Bay Fur Company, which is the shot of the models in the window. 20 Cent Movie, which is the shot when they come out of the movie theater. That's a painting by Reginald Marsh. And then there's also New York Movie, which is when they're sitting, the first shot when they're in the movie theater, there's like a shot of the usher standing against the wall. That's also a painting. So maybe I'll send you the pictures maybe for like social media or something when this comes out as a comparison or something. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for trivia. I guess we kind of just did a movie from 1981, but what you got for us?
I actually, because we did just do a movie from 1981, which was The Evil Dead, so I remember going through the list of movies for that year and kind of being like, there's not a lot of great stuff here. I tried looking a little harder this time. There's still not a lot of really great stuff for us from 1981, but I actually want to ask Jackie, you've now seen 2 movies from 1981, Pennies from Heaven and The Evil Dead. Which is better?
Oh my god.
Because Austin prefers Pennies from Heaven, I prefer Evil Dead. Like, you're the tiebreaker.
This is like the opposite of Sophie's Choice, when you want to pick both to be killed and never seen again. Wow, that is so hard. Okay, if I had to watch one again, which would I watch? And death is not an option.
No.
Oh, like I'm thinking about both of them. I really don't want to answer this question, honestly.
I'd rather you don't answer it either.
All right, it's a draw.
Thank you.
That's fair.
I'd rather watch any other movie from 1981. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can do that.
Is there any action movies you can think of that came out in 1981?
James Bond for Your Eyes Only, Clash of the Titans.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, baby.
Oh, there we go, yes. That's a
what
real
I
movie
choose.
that came out.
Oh, I forgot to mention, this movie was nominated for 3 Oscars, I believe. For costumes, for Bob Mackie, for sound, I believe, and
Screenplay,
I think. Was
Sorry.
it? Yeah?
Yeah.
And screenplay. And then it was omitted from all of the like major categories, which, I mean, fine, but it also kind of unusual because it was nominated for a lot of Golden Globes in those categories, and like Bernadette Peters won a Golden Globe for Best Actress. So it's unusual that a movie that's nominated in the Golden Globes or wins in the Golden Globes aren't nominated for Oscars, I guess.
Interesting. Did they win any of the ones they were nominated for?
I don't think so. For the Golden Globe, though, I did see that Bernadette Peters beat both Liza Minnelli and Carol Burnett, and I was like, oh, that is a Broadway-heavy year. That is an Austin year at the Golden Globes.
Yeah, that is your lineup.
Ratings?
Ratings.
Ooh, golly.
All right, Jackie, go.
I'll give you my pre-discussion ratings and my post-discussion ratings. Because pre, it was 0 and 0. I didn't find a single thing that I liked in this movie. I liked the visual of the Pennies from Heaven dance, and that was like it. And that wasn't really part of the movie. That was just a visual appeal. And then quality, I've struggled so much with the way it was shot, and I'm not understanding the time frames. Like, a lot of the scenes didn't have an end point that made sense to me, so I had a hard time putting that together. So the quality of the movie, I shouldn't have given a 0, I guess, because I did appreciate the big dance numbers and the over-the-top theatrical parts of his delusions. Again, those big coins, the like women doing the can, like like a musical that I expect. But now talking about it and thinking about it more and trying to appreciate a movie in a way that smart people appreciate movies. Trying to understand what they're trying to do doesn't really raise my enjoyment that much, because I do experience movies superficially and I prefer it that way. I don't really gravitate towards horrible or sad stories, right? Like I've made that clear. The realities of life, not my jam. But it does make me give it a much higher quality rating, because they're trying something really different. They're trying to speak on a lot of different levels, and they're not apologizing for this terrible person. They're just like, this is an example of how this dude lives his life without saying he's a hero.
Right.
So the quality of what they're trying to do, I'll give it like a 4. Like, they were trying something really ambitious. They tried to mesh a lot of things that don't necessarily happen in movies before. So, for what it was, what they were trying to accomplish, they did some innovative things.
Yeah. It was a swing and a miss in a lot of regards, but I do think that they tried some new things, and I think got credit for that.
So that's that.
Jen?
Yeah, so similarly, this was hard for me to figure out where I actually stand on this one. I think if you had described this to me without me having seen it, I would have thought I would like it. Because unlike Jackie, I do like these weird kind of out there things. I like kind of more, deeper level. I like the idea that they're kind of deconstructing the idea of like a 1930s musical, and like, I don't know, like, it sounds a lot more appealing to me than the actual way I felt watching it. So my enjoyment, I'm going to give it like a 2 because I did not enjoy a lot of it. But then quality-wise, I appreciate what they were trying to do. I think there was a lot of good technical things. Like Jackie mentioned the visuals. Like I did really like a lot of those, like you mentioned the paintings too. I think that's really cool. Everything was very stylized. It just didn't work for me. So quality-wise, like I'll give it like a 5.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Jen, I thought you would be a wild card on this. I was like, this could go either way. I know she likes high concept stuff. I think this falls into that category, so it could go either way. But then I also struggled with how much information to give you to go into it. So,
you know, I am glad that you set me in blind because that's how I like watching movies. But yeah, like I think if I had, like I said, if I had known about it, I would have been like, oh, that sounds so cool.
Yeah.
But then when I watched it, I was like, this is not cool.
Okay, yeah. My ratings are 10 out of 10. I'm sorry, guys. I love this movie. I like I said, I kind of forget how much Arthur's in the movie. This is Eileen's movie for me. I think she's really engaging. I love Bernadette Peters, obviously, so I recognize that there's bias in this rating, but I genuinely think she does a really good job, and I think she carries the movie more than Steve Martin does. And I just love it. I love the music. I love what it does. I love the way music is used. I think I wish more people knew about this movie so that more people could like talk about it, maybe. Because I'd love to hear other discussions about it. And then for quality, I'm gonna say 8 out of 10 because yeah, some of the pacing really gets on my nerves. How many times they say Arthur really gets on my nerves. Some of the dialogue just doesn't work for me, and obviously there's like I said, there's stuff that doesn't quite work, but I think it's innovative. I think they took risks. The costumes are beautiful. All the music is really well. I think it's just really interesting. I think it's really cool. I love the way they use music. I think it's really smart. I said that like 8 times, but I really love it.
It does help me understand why you like it so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because your enjoyment comes from what they're using the music to accomplish.
Yeah.
Whereas when I see a movie, the music is very separate and far away. Like I don't prioritize understanding the music or paying attention to it. It's usually background noise.
Yeah.
And so understanding what they're trying to do with music is not a way I experience a movie. So it makes me understand why you like it so much more.
Yeah. It's also one of those movies that the more I watch it, I catch different things every time I watch it. So I feel like I get a lot out of it, even now. So I guess this brings us to Friendometer.
I want to know Austin's Friendometer. Yeah, I'm so scared.
We're both fine, but we just need to know, Austin, like, are we still friends?
So
she's thinking about it, man. She's like, I'm not sure. Oh boy.
Like I said, I appreciate that you guys were fairly gentle. I think that we're green. It may have dipped a little bit into yellow when Jackie couldn't choose between this or The Evil Dead after how much she railed against The Evil Dead.
I'm sorry. If we're talking about purely watching it in the visuals, this is way less upsetting. But if I had to watch it and like focus on this movie again, like it's too awful of Arthur. You know what I mean? Like to me, he was the movie.
So what I'm hearing is let's watch The Evil Dead again.
So yeah, I mean, I think that we're green, but it's like it maybe ventured a little into yellow just because of how much I love this movie and how afraid I was to make you guys watch it.
I will say at one point when I was talking, I was watching Austin and I could see she was like holding herself perfectly still. And I was like, oh my God, she's getting so mad at me. I'm like, how do I save this? What do I do?
At one point when we were talking, I like, same thing, I kind of like looked at Austin on the screen and she was just dead serious. And I was like, oh no, I'm upsetting Austin. Never mind. I mean, it's great.
Yes, I take it all back.
It is the best Bernadette Peters movie I've ever seen. I think it's the only Bernadette Peters movie I've ever seen.
It's the second. There's gonna be 2 more on the list. If my genre is musicals, she does musicals, so sorry.
Your genre is stuff Austin likes, so she's gonna be in all of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I guess that is it for Pennies from Heaven. What are we watching next week, Jen?
So we're going to do things a little differently next week. For the month of March, we're all going to be picking movies that we haven't seen, but really want to. So I'm going to make these guys watch a horror movie that I'm very excited to finally get to, and it is called Saint Maud. And none of us have any idea what it's going to be like, and we're going to discuss it next week. I'm so excited.
Oh, this is going to be rough.
I'm so terrified. I'm gonna like sleep with a baseball bat in my bed, I can tell.
All I know about it is that I've heard it's genuinely scary, so I'm very excited.
From horror people,
Okay,
like people who know horror movies have said this. Oh, that's bad.
All right, well, we got through it. We got through Pennies from Heaven. I had a delightful time. I still love this movie just as much as I did before we talked. It was a roller coaster of emotions, but I'm okay. I love this movie. Anyway, so next week we're going to be watching Saint Maud. Jackie and I don't think this is going to go well for us. But in the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter at I Hate Your Taste or on Instagram, I Hate Your Taste Pod. We also have a website. It is IHateYourTasteInMovies.wordpress.com, and there are links there to our merch. If you like what we're doing, please, please, please leave us a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. It really helps get the word out there. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.